Hello and welcome back to the Freedom Seeker Show, where we dive deep into conversations that inspire and transform. I'm your host, Yvonne Winkler, certified life coach and women's wisdom guide. I'm also an author, facilitator, and a mental health advocate. Today, I am thrilled to have with us Alia, a holistic nutritionist, life coach, and breathwork facilitator whose approach to health goes beyond the plate. Alia is here to help us understand how the harmony of mind, body, and spirit can redefine our relationship with food. And she is not just about what we eat, but how we think and feel about eating. So join us as we explore mindful eating, self-reflection, and the journey to positive inner dialogue. Welcome, Alia.
Hello. I'm so excited to have this conversation.
Me as well. My goodness, like food and mindful eating and what we eat and how we eat has been a big part of my journey for a very long time, and one that I don't feel I've ever really mastered or done well. I'm not a bad eater, but I'm certainly not a mindful eater. So I'm very, very excited to dive into this topic with you, particularly as I'm now really entered into my midlife, and a lot of things have shifted and changed once again. This is really timely. So let's start with, can you explain why creating a healthy relationship with ourselves is so crucial for improving our relationship with food? And then how does that internal harmony affect our eating habits?
Mhm. So, improving your relationship with yourself will directly impact the relationship that you have with food because it all stems back to having self-awareness in terms of the way that we think influences the way that we feel and then the way that we show up in life. So speaking specifically around my company SAS Method, the three pillars are self-awareness, structure, and sustainability. So self-awareness being how the way that we think influences the way that we feel, and how the way that we feel ultimately influences the way we show up.
Yeah.
Structure comes into the tangibles. So being able to have something to identify in terms of what's working for me, what's potentially not working, what's not supportive for me, and then what's one thing that I can do to improve. And then the sustainability piece is all about meeting yourself where you're at. And so that's comes into the importance of titration, which is the idea of taking small steps, taking baby steps. Because when it comes to approaching your health, your well-being, and your relationship with food, you want to do something that you can sustain for life, not this momentary all or nothing. The way I define fitness to my clients is a pendulum. So if you're always in that middle center of the pendulum and you swing hard the other way, one way, then naturally what's going to happen is you go hard the other way and then you have no balance. And so thinking of this pendulum, you always want to be swinging in that center ground. So if you go a little bit one way, okay, you can return back to center. You can find your balance again. If you swing hard the other way, then okay, you can find that centerpiece. But it's all about creating something that's sustainable for you. And again, that all comes down into how you think, and how the way you think influences the way that you feel.
Yeah, I love that, Aaliyah. So mindfulness is a very powerful tool in many areas then, and can describe how mindfulness, when connecting with our bodies, can help us identify our true needs versus when we turn to food for comfort. So can you describe what that does, how that works?
Mhm. So, in considering the way that we feel, that's going to allow us to, in the moment and present by present moment, give ourselves the grace to be able to say, okay, what do I truly need right now? Rather than what do I think I need to do? It's no, what do I truly need? So it all comes back to just meeting yourself where you're at. And I think one thing that so many women struggle with is being their biggest cheerleader and their biggest advocate and treating themselves the way that they would a loved one. And so if you're struggling to show up for yourself in a way that's rooted in grace, you can ask yourself, how would I treat my best friend? And then giving yourself that same love and grace and patience that you so rightfully deserve.
Yeah.
So it really comes all back to just leading from a place of grace and considering what you truly need. Specifically around food, if you think about a baby, when a baby cries, what's one of the first things that it's potentially asking for? It would be love, connection, but what's one thing that typically it gets is a bottle. So even from a young age, when we're viewing our relationship with food as adults, if we're crying for something, if we need something, it's only natural to gravitate towards finding that love and attention via food, because that's how we're fed as a baby. That's how we're receiving love. And so, with the consideration of that, most of us are not taught or retaught as adults how to get true love and connection from ourselves separate to food. And that's one thing that I see time and time again is how can we give ourselves the grace and the love and the support we need separate to food, and then relearning how to bring mindfulness back into the equation around food.
Yeah. Yeah. Awareness, mindfulness, and then, making food not necessarily the coping mechanism for whatever is going on. Yeah.
And
Oh,
it's
I can see that. Wow. I never really thought of it that way. That, yeah, that is one of the first things we get when we're children, and even not just babies, but even as children, there's usually a food reward or a food element tied into parenting or into the way we've been raised. So I can definitely see that. And is this something that you work with your clients on? Is this relearning not to make food necessarily our coping mechanism?
Mm, it's definitely something that I try to bring awareness to, specifically just creating a dialogue around how they were potentially raised with food. So if there was always cookies in the cookie jar, but they were told you have to finish everything on your plate before you get to have a cookie in the cookie jar. And so thinking of that specifically, it's no wonder you might feel like, okay, I can't connect to my hunger cues anymore. And I find myself potentially overeating, or I feel like there's never enough food to go around because I was told in order to get something that I really want, I have to do this. And so it just creates this very dysregulated, or it can create a very dysregulated relationship with food because we're not connected to our bodies and actually being able to ask ourselves, okay, am I hungry? Have I had enough? Do I have to finish everything on my plate to truly be done and then get what I actually want? So just coming back into that, connecting with our bodies in order to recognize what purpose food can serve for us is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. I can definitely see that, which leads me right to the next question, which is that you really emphasize the importance of reflection. So, could you share some reflective practices that can help us move towards our health and wellness goals?
So I think it's easy to look outside ourselves to try and figure out what is going to work for us and educate. There comes a of course time and place where education is really important, and fueling our body with proper nutrients is important and absolutely serves its place. But when it comes to the first step, I tend to dig into the reflective piece as you're mentioning, and that comes down into one way it can is, okay, what's working for me right now? What do I feel really, really good about? And then what's not working so well? What is causing friction, or what doesn't make me feel good? And it can be as simple as that. And then bringing the two, okay, what's working well? What's potentially not working well? Okay, what's one thing I can adjust? And that's where the sustainability piece comes in, where you're not trying to change everything at once. You're not trying a new diet. You're not cleaning out your entire fridge and only putting, the healthy foods in there. It's okay. What's working? What can I give myself recognition for and grace for and a pat on the back for? What's not working? What do I know is making me, maybe slam my head against the wall? And then what's one thing, just one thing that I can adjust or shift to get me in that direction that I want to go.
Um, this leads me kind of to another question regarding the length of time. I know that that's very individual, and at the same time, I'm curious, can you comment a little bit on when you speak of sustainability, it might appear like, oh gosh, that's going to be a long process. What have you seen with your clients? What is somewhat of a time frame where we can start seeing some changes going using the SAS method?
Mhm. It really does depend. It depends on the changes that you'd like to see, because for some of my clients, weight loss, for example, is a primary goal. And so if we're speaking from a physical standpoint, and I'm speaking on a healthy rate of fat loss, and of course, when you see physical changes, naturally, it can make you feel more motivated to continue making sustainable changes. And so I would say if we're looking at like a pound a week, then we're going over the course of 4 or 5 months. Okay, that's a decent rate of change, but that's speaking from a strictly physical perspective.
Mhm.
If you're truly wanting to create a sustainable lifestyle change, I'm going to kind of flip that and say it can be immediate in the sense of you can practice mindfulness right away. And so
Yes.
what I find happens is, let's say you struggle with overeating and you eat past the point of fullness, and this is a habit that you're trying to break. Rather than say you overeat at lunch and you're like, okay, well, the days are right off, I'll start again tomorrow. No, you start again your next meal right away. Your next meal, you are going to go in with intention and you are going to practice mindfulness. The day is not a write off because you overate or you had something that you might consider bad. You start right away. As soon as you recognize it, you make the next best choice. And that is how the momentum happens. And then you continue to make and recognize those intentional choices. And that momentum stacks, and then the transformation happens. And so when you can catch yourself, and this circles back to the self-awareness piece and giving yourself grace, the sooner you catch yourself having those thoughts of, well, you failed, or like throw in the towel, you're on this side of the pendulum and you want to get to the other side. The only way to get to the other side is by being like, okay, snap out of it. You've got this. I'm going to start right away and I'm going to do this now. And so the changes can happen instantly. Maybe not the physical changes, that's what takes time. But the decision to show up for yourself can happen as soon as you recognize it.
No, I love that you said that and that you made that distinction. I've been working with this for some time now, and more specifically since some of the hormonal changes have started for me, and the weight gain happened without me having really changed much about my diet, but it certainly had me look at what I'm doing and how I'm going about my day and how I'm eating. And um, and mindfulness keeps coming up for any reading that I do, but also my trainer who I'm working with right now. And that's one of the things we are working on so strongly, is not to use food to punish myself or to demonize or do any of those things. And that was my number one thing, was is that I would write off the day. Like if I you know my Achilles heel is the Brookside dark chocolates with the blueberries. So I watched your reel yesterday that you posted on being in the grocery store and seeing this delicious cake or whatever the sweet was that you had there. And I just loved how you walked us through to just stop and recognize that you can have it. It's not that there's a denial of having it. It's, do you really want to have this right now, and or can you just walk away? So I just loved your practical advice. So for anyone watching this right now, go follow Alia on Instagram. She does an amazing job with her reels. Coming back to the hormones, Alia, I'm wondering, a lot of the audience here may be experiencing hormonal changes like I am. How do these affect weight management, and what mindful eating tips may you have to address those changes?
Mhm. So thinking of how hormone fluctuations impact how we feel, let's say you had a really poor sleep the night before and you wake up and you're groggy and you had planned to go for a morning walk. Well, you're tired.
Mm-hmm.
And so, are you going to feel inclined to go for the walk, or are you going to feel inclined to grab something that's going to potentially give you that spark of energy? So then
Yes.
you otherwise go for the coffee.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to want to be as active throughout the day, and you're going to, it might even be unrecognized at first. You might naturally gravitate towards more palatable foods because your body's needing this energy that you're not getting from a restful sleep. And so when it comes to how you can create more mindfulness around this, I think it just comes down to being present with where you are in that moment. And if a walk that you had planned that was going to be 45 minutes around the block feels so far away, okay, let's go for five.
Mm-hmm.
You go for 5 minutes and you meet yourself there. And I think it's just not having that approach of that all or nothingness that so many of us tend to practice is so important. It's if you can't do 45, can you do 5? Does that sound a little more manageable? And it just comes back to the sustainability piece and those baby steps piece where you can't do it all. It doesn't mean you do nothing. It means that you just ask yourself what feels doable. And even if we wanted to circle that back around food, if you have those delicious chocolates in front of you and you're like, oh, you can't have any of that. Naturally, what we restrict, we want to rebel against. And so instead of being like, well, you can't have any, it's okay, I'm going to have a few. And then I'm going to try and just let that be enough. And so it all just comes down to not creating this idea of good or bad or right or wrong, but really allowing yourself to just, okay, what do I need? How do I feel? And then how can I sort of meet myself in that middle ground of meeting what I really feel like I want to need and how I feel and just trying to align yourself there.
I love that. And if I can add something that has come up for me as a result of all of this is uh, preparation. Because, like, let's go with the scenario that you suggested, had a crappy sleep, so I didn't get up on time to have that 45-minute walk before I start my work. Now, for me, all the other cards fall too. Now, I'm not going for the walk. I'm not preparing my shake in the morning because I don't have time. So I'm just going to grab something out of the pantry, like a bar or something, just to have something in my belly so the coffee, doesn't sit quite so, so heavy. Um, Once I started the day off bad, the whole day seems to be going bad. So I love the analogy of not the all or nothing, like dropping that mindset and just going, okay, where am I at here? And how can I prepare maybe for tomorrow if this should happen again? How can I prepare in a way that I have something healthy ready to go if I need to, rather than having to make a shake. So I just wanted to add that because that is like your example is a real life scenario for me. It happens almost almost every day now. And again, following you, you have some really great tips and examples for foods that we can prepare in advance and put in the fridge that are high in protein and that are really satiable and easy grab and go. Like, you don't have to go for that muffin at the drive-through. Like, you can prepare something at home. Let's bring in breath work because you are a breath work facilitator as well. So how can breath work complement our nutritional and emotional well-being?
Mhm. There's so many ways. Breathwork is literally all encompassing. I mean, when you think about it, we breathe every day, all day long. And speaking specifically to breathwork as a practice,
Mhm.
there's different types of breathwork. So one idea of breathwork is that it's essentially expanding our window of tolerance and what we can handle in terms of our nervous system, because we've got two different kinds of, or a few different kinds of breath work. One is more activating, and that's more of a stimulus. And so it puts a bit of stress on the body. The other one is more grounding. And so that's where we can calm ourselves down. And so a really cool thing about breath work is when you pair those two different, the activation and the grounding together, a little bit of stimulus, and then you take it away, and then a little bit of stimulus, and then you take it away. You slowly teach your nervous system to be able to expand with those little bouts of stress. And so what happens is in everyday life, it's almost like, again, as your window of tolerance, so to speak, expands, you can handle the everyday little stressors that come up so much smoother. So let's say you take the morning that goes frantic as an example. What might have once spiraled you into this, oh, I can't handle this. I'm now anxious, and the whole day I just feel I'm on edge. Well, if you've practiced breath work and you've practiced that little bit of stimulus on your body and then that little bit of grounding, you might otherwise be like, oh, this bit of stress and this anxiety that I feel, that actually it doesn't feel so bad. And so that's one idea of breath work, is that it's expanding the window of what your nervous system can tolerate. Not only that, but the other idea of breath work is that it brings you into your body. So you start to recognize, okay, how do I feel through my breath? Or is there any sensations that are coming up right now? Where is that coming up right now? And can I just sit with this for a minute, knowing that I'm safe, I'm taken care of? And I like to say that you are not your emotions or your feelings. You're the container that holds them. And so it's always safe to feel them when you're allowing yourself to, because you control your breath. And so you can control the emotions coming up in your body. And so being able to sit with that is so beneficial in everyday life, but also just in your relationship with yourself and with food, because you create that connection and you learn how to be with yourself, whether you're anxious or sad or whatever is sitting there. You start to teach yourself how to just be with it rather than react or have to immediately respond to it.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like, well, breath is how we regulate as well. I mean, that's why we breathe. So it sounds like it, in addition to connecting us with our body, it also allows us to regulate whatever is going on right now by giving us that safety and that control, if I dare say that word. But it gives us that self-control to regulate whatever is going on. I'm so delighted and intrigued of your capacity and your knowledge that you have on this topic. So thank you so much. It's been a profound pleasure learning from you today, Alia. Your insights and that delicate balance between our diet and our thoughts and our emotions just create a new path for our audience to consider for working with their body image, with their diet, with their food, and how they treat it. So thank you for those little nuggets of wisdom that you shared with us. To our audience, remember the journey to a healthier life. Start with a single mindful step. It's the small steps in order to be sustainable.
Yeah.
And make sure to visit Alia's website, sasmethodcoaching.com. I'll put the link in the show notes below so you can discover her transformative work for yourself, and also check her out on her Instagram account. But before we wrap up, we're going to invite you to something really special. So we've been talking about the transformative power of mindfulness and create. So we're inviting you to share your own experiences with mindfulness and eating. But here's the exciting part. You'll have a chance to win a mini session with Alia herself. How cool is that? She's agreed to give a mini session with her for you to really dig into whatever your stories and whatever your experiences are with food. So here's how you can participate. snap a picture or share a story on Instagram that captures your journey with mindful eating. Maybe it's your morning routine. Maybe it's a meal that you're particularly proud of, those plate pictures. Or maybe a reflection on how mindfulness has transformed your relationship with food already. Then use the hashtag mindful meals journey and make sure you tag myself and Alia. So my handle is at Yvonne Winkler _ and Alia's handle is Alia.Dunnil. And then we'll be picking one lucky participant to receive that free mini session with Alia, where you can dive deeper into your wellness goals and get personalized guidance from the expert herself. I mean, it's a great way to reflect on your own progress and perhaps even inspire others along the way. We're so looking forward to seeing your beautiful moments and hearing how mindfulness has touched your life. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.